This video shows you how to use the PTAGIS website to answer the questions on your lab homework assignment number 3. First, the information that we're interested in pulling out are all of the steelhead that were marked initially in the North Fork of the Asotin, South Fork, and Charlie Creek during the years of 2008, 2009, and 2010. The first piece of information we're interested in is how many juvenile steelhead were marked in each of those years. Next, we want to know how many of those marked fish were then detected during their juvenile migration to the ocean at 3 different dams, Lower Granite, McNary, and Bonneville. And then finally, how many of those fish were detected returning back upstream as adults at those same 3 dams. I'm logged in already to the PTAGIS website, and to pull out this information, I'm going to go into Data and then Advanced Reporting. That brings me to this web page, and I'm going to launch the Querybuilder2. Once you've run a few reports, those will show up over here, but for now, we need to create a query. I'll leave it up to you to look through all the different types of ways that you can ask for information from this website, but just for today, we're going to use this complete tag history query. Once you've clicked on that, it pops up all of the different attributes, different pieces of information that you can request. Over here, it's automatically populated some of the information that it thinks you'll want, but you don't necessarily need to use it all. In our case, we're just interested in the fish that were tagged in these individual locations by year, not by individual date, because the fish were observed multiple times at an antenna, that can really add up to lots of observations that don't tell us very much information. They don't add to our data. So I'm going to send that event date back over to this left side. And then I'm going to pull out the following information. First, I want the event length. So, where'd that go? I'm curious to know what the length of the fish that were tagged were. Next, I'll pull out event year. And then mark site and mark year. So when I'm finished, I should have those different attributes selected over here on the right side. And at this point, let's save our query. And let's call it something useful, like juvenile, whoops, that's what I want, mark. You can obviously think of a better name. I've just used up a lot of different names, so I'm trying to think of something original, 2008 through 2010. And we'll go ahead and save that report. At this point, it will ask you where you want to save it. You can create a new folder. I already have one for this class, and I'll save it in there. Keep all the defaults, and then run that newly saved report. It will bring you back to this same page. Now, before we actually run the full report, we want to narrow down our criteria. So we want to filter on some of these attributes, which you can do over here in this left column. Now that we've saved it, all of the attributes from this right side show up in this left column, and we can narrow down our search criteria. So first, let's narrow down by a mark site. We know that we want fish that were tagged in the North Fork and South Fork Asotin and in Charlie Creek, which I can enter in here. There it is, those 3 locations. And we want to pull out fish that were marked in specific years, 2008, 2009, 2010. To select multiple options over here, I'm just holding down the Control key while clicking on them. So we have those 3 years chosen. Now that we've filtered our information down somewhat, we can come down here and run the report. And this can take a few seconds to run. Once your query is done running, you can see that you have individual pit tagged fish over here, the names of the pit tags. In this column, the type of event here, where that event occurred, and so forth. This is the year that fish were observed compared with the year that fish were marked. If you don't know what one of these column headings means, you can hold your cursor down over that heading and you'll get additional information about it. In this particular case, if we spend some time looking at this data, we'll see that there are some species included in here that are not steelhead. So we have all these unknown, and these show up at our antenna observations. When that fish with a pit tag in it hits the antenna, the only information that's recorded is the pit tag code, the time and date, not the species. And so those are all showing up as unknowns. But we'll also find that there are some bull trout that were detected in the Asotin as well. So we want to get rid of those. So to do this, I'm going to add a condition. If this View Filter toolbar isn't showing up on your computer, you can go up here to Tools, View Filter, and make sure that's checked. And this toolbar should show up. So to add a condition, I click on that, and I'm going to first filter on event species. And I want to keep the unknowns and the steelhead, but leave the bull trout. And to run that now with the filter, I'll just check this apply check mark. And my number of observations has decreased by only about 20. But now we know that we're not dealing with bull trout. In this particular case, it's a pretty safe assumption that the unknown fish in this data set are indeed steelhead, because we're only interested in observations down through the Columbia hydro system, where bull trout really rarely go. If you were working in another watershed, you would want to be more careful with this. And we're still dealing with a lot of data here. And remember, for our first question, we're just interested in how many juvenile steelhead were marked in each of these years. We're not necessarily interested in these observations at antennas and recapture events. To narrow down our search criteria, we're going to add another condition. We're going to filter on event type. And we're just going to choose mark release and then apply that over here. Now we end up with a data set of 9,000. Those are each of the fish that were tagged. We're going to take that data and export it to Excel and then manipulate it in Excel. To do that, I just go to Home, come down to Export, and as you can see, you can export this in a number of different formats. We'll just go ahead and export to Excel with formatting. Go ahead and keep all of the defaults and click Export over here. And it might take a second to process this. Then you can just go ahead and open that Excel file. And we will play around with these Excel files in a later video.